Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive in, I need you to do something for me. Grab a notebook, open your Notes app, or at the very least, make sure you've got nothing else competing for your attention right now. Because what we're about to cover in the next hour and a half isn't your typical productivity content that you'll forget about tomorrow. This is different. Now, if you're anything like me, you probably think New Year's resolutions are complete nonsense. And honestly, you're not wrong. But here's the thing. It's not that the idea of changing your life is stupid. It's that most people approach transformation in completely the wrong way. Let me explain what I mean. Every January, millions of people around the world make these grand declarations about how this year is going to be different. They're going to lose weight, start that business, quit that job, build that side hustle, get in shape, read more books.
You aren't where you want to be because you aren't the person who would be there. Okay, let's start with the most fundamental misunderstanding about goal achievement. When it comes to setting big goals, people tend to focus almost exclusively on one of two critical requirements for success. And unfortunately, they usually focus on the wrong one. Here are the two requirements. First, changing your actions to make progress toward the goal. This is what most people focus on. This is the "what do I need to do" question. And here's the thing, this is actually the least important factor. It's second order. Second, changing who you fundamentally are so that your behavior naturally follows. This is the most important factor. This is first-order change. This is everything. Let me break this down because it's crucial that you understand this distinction. Most people set a surface-level goal. They get all hyped up. They tell their friends about it. They maybe stay disciplined for the first few weeks. They're riding that motivation wave. And then, almost without struggle, they slip right back into their old patterns, back to their old ways, back to square one. Why does this happen? Because they were trying to build a magnificent life on a rotting foundation. They were trying to force new behaviors onto an old identity, and it simply doesn't work long-term. Let me give you some concrete examples so this really lands. Think about someone you know who's genuinely successful, not fake Instagram successful, actually successful. It could be that friend who has an incredible physique, like they're legitimately in bodybuilder-level shape. Or maybe it's a founder or CEO you follow who's built a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Or perhaps it's that charismatic person in your life who can walk into any room, strike up a conversation with complete strangers, and make it look effortless. Zero anxiety, zero fear of judgment. Now here's the question. Do you think that bodybuilder has to grind and force themselves to eat healthy? Do you think they wake up every morning and have this internal battle about whether they should eat chicken and vegetables or hit up McDonald's? Or what about the CEO? Do you think they have to discipline themselves every single morning to show up and lead their team? Do they set 17 alarms and need to drag themselves out of bed? To you, watching from the outside, it might seem like they're constantly grinding and forcing themselves to do hard things. But here's the truth that most people miss. They genuinely can't see themselves living any other way. The bodybuilder, they actually have to grind to eat unhealthily. Like if you put them at a buffet full of junk food and told them they had to eat it, that would be the hard part. The CEO, they would have to force themselves to lie in bed past their alarm clock, and they would hate every second of it. Now, there's obviously nuance here. I'm not saying these people never struggle or never have bad days, but at a fundamental level, their identity is aligned with their goals. Let me make this personal for a second. To some people, My own lifestyle seems extreme and overly disciplined. They look at my schedule, my habits, my routines, and they think that seems exhausting. But to me, it's completely natural. I'm not saying that to brag or to contrast it with any other lifestyle. I simply enjoy living this way. When my mom tells me that I should take a break, go out, and have some fun, I have to hold my tongue from saying, if I weren't having fun, why would I be doing what I'm doing?
You aren't where you want to be because you don't want to be there. I want to share a quote with you from Alfred Adler, one of the founding figures of psychology. He said, "Trust only movement. Life happens at the level of events, not of words. Trust movement." What does this mean? It means that what you say means nothing. What you actually do, that's what reveals the truth. If you genuinely want to change who you are, you need to understand how the mind actually works. Not how you think it works, not how motivational speakers tell you it works, but how it actually operates at a fundamental level. Because once you understand this, you can start to reprogram it. The first step to understanding your mind is grasping this concept. All behavior is goal-oriented. Every single action you take is teleological, meaning it's directed towards some end goal. Now, when I first say this, most people think, yeah, obviously. But when we really dig into what this means, most people don't actually want to hear it, because it means taking responsibility in a way that's uncomfortable. Let me give you some simple examples first. You take a step forward because you want to reach a certain location. That's obvious. You scratch your nose because you want to make an itch go away. Clear enough, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Most of your goals are completely unconscious. You're not aware that you're pursuing them. For example, when you sit on the couch in the middle of the day and start scrolling through social media, you might think you're just taking a break or relaxing. But actually, you might be trying to burn time before your next responsibility because you're anxious about that responsibility. Or you're trying to avoid feeling bored. Or you're seeking that little dopamine hit from notifications. These are goals, unconscious ones, but goals nonetheless. Now, let's go even deeper because this is where it gets really uncomfortable. On an unconscious and complex level, you often pursue goals that actively harm you. But your mind is brilliant at justification. It creates socially acceptable narratives that don't make you seem like a loser. Here's a concrete example. Let's say you can't stop procrastinating on your work. You might justify this by saying you lack discipline or you're just not motivated enough yet. These sound like reasonable explanations, right? But the reality is that you're achieving a goal. That goal might be protecting yourself from the judgment that would come from finishing and actually sharing your work with the world. Because as long as it stays in draft form, no one can criticize it. As long as it stays in draft form, you're safe from rejection. Think about that for a second. Your procrastination isn't a character flaw. It's a protective strategy. It's your mind achieving a goal that you're not consciously aware of. Here's another example. Let's say you constantly talk about wanting to quit your dead-end job. You complain about it to your friends. You fantasize about sending that resignation email. But month after month, year after year, you stay. Why? You might tell yourself you don't have enough courage. You might think you were never really a risk taker. But the truth, you're pursuing the goals of safety, predictability, and maintaining your social image. Because everyone in your life sees having a steady job as success. Your parents are proud that you're stable.
Your friends don't question your life choices because you're doing what's normal. Quitting would mean disappointing people. It would mean uncertainty. It would mean the possibility of failure that people could witness and judge. So you stay, not because you lack courage, but because unconsciously those other goals are stronger than your stated goal of doing meaningful work. This is absolutely crucial to understand. Real change requires changing your goals. Not just setting new surface-level goals, but fundamentally changing what you're unconsciously pursuing. Because here's the thing. When you set a new goal in the traditional sense, you're often doing that because it serves an unconscious goal that's actually harming you. Maybe you're setting goals because you want to appear ambitious to others. Maybe you're doing it because it temporarily makes you feel good about yourself. Maybe it's a form of procrastination itself, planning instead of doing. What I'm talking about is changing your point of view, because that's what a goal actually is at the deepest level. A goal is a projection into the future that acts as a lens of perception. It determines what information, ideas, and resources you even notice in the first place. Two people can walk through the exact same.
You aren't where you want to be because you're afraid to be there. I want to share another powerful quote, this time from Maxwell Maltz, who wrote the book Psycho-Cybernetics. He said, "The important thing for you to remember is that it does not matter in the least how you got the idea or where it came from. You may never have met a professional hypnotist. You may never have been formally hypnotized. But if you have accepted an idea from yourself, your teachers, your parents, friends, advertisements, from any other source, and further, if you are firmly convinced that idea is true, it has the same power over you as the hypnotist's words have over the hypnotized subject." Think about that. You've been hypnotized. We all have. And we continue to hypnotize ourselves every single day with the stories we tell about who we are. Let me show you exactly how you became who you are today, and more importantly, how this same process will determine who you become tomorrow. I call this the anatomy of identity, and it works in a predictable cycle. Step 1. You want to achieve a goal. Step 2. You perceive reality through the lens of that goal. Step 3. You only notice important information and ideas that help you achieve that goal. This is learning. Step 4. You act toward that goal and receive feedback that you're progressing toward it. Step 5. You repeat that behavior until it becomes automatic and unconscious. This is conditioning. Step 6. That behavior becomes part of who you think you are. I am the type of person who... Step 7. You defend your identity to maintain psychological consistency. Step 8. Your identity shapes new goals, restarting the entire cycle. And here's the dangerous part. If that identity is disadvantageous toward living a good life, this cycle becomes a prison. Now, the unfortunate reality is that you have to break this cycle between steps 6 and 7. But here's what makes this so challenging. This process starts when you're a child, long before you have any conscious awareness of what's happening. Let me walk you through how this played out in your early life. As a young child, you have one primary goal: survival. That's it. And you're completely dependent on your parents to teach you how to survive in this world. You had to conform to their rules, their beliefs, their way of seeing reality. You had no choice. And since the way most parents teach is through reward and punishment, they smile when you do what they want, they get upset when you don't, you learned very quickly to adopt their beliefs and values. Because if you didn't, you'd be punished, you'd lose their approval. And as a child, that feels like life or death.
You don't actually think for yourself until you become conscious of this pattern and actively choose to break it. But here's where it gets even more complex. Your parents went through this exact same process throughout their entire lives, and so did their parents and their parents' parents. This is generational conditioning. Unless your parents consciously broke the pattern themselves, they were conditioned by the culturally accepted ideas of success from the industrial age. Things like go to school, get good grades, get a stable job, work for 40 years, retire at 65, and then maybe enjoy life. They carry both the best and the worst conditioning from their lineage, and they passed it down to you. Now let me take this one layer deeper, because this is where it gets really interesting from a psychological perspective. Once you fulfill your basic physical survival needs, which is actually quite easy to do in today's developed world, you're practically born into safety and abundance. Your mind shifts to a different level of survival. You start to survive on the conceptual or ideological level. What does this mean? It means you may not be trying to protect and reproduce your physical body anymore, but you absolutely protect and reproduce your mind, your ideas, your beliefs, your worldview. It's not difficult to see this playing out everywhere. Just look at the internet. There's a constant war of ideas happening, and the participants are individual and group identities fighting to survive. Here's how this manifests. When your physical body feels threatened, you go into fight or flight mode. Your heart races, you get a surge of adrenaline, your muscles tense up. This is obvious. But here's what most people don't realize. When your identity feels threatened, the exact same thing happens. Your body responds the same way. Let me give you some examples. If you're heavily identified with a political ideology, and I mean really identified, where your political beliefs feel like fundamental truth rather than just opinions, you'll feel physically threatened when someone challenges those beliefs. You'll literally feel stress in your body. Emotionally, it will feel like you've been slapped in the face. And since most people don't pause to analyze their emotions for truth, since most people just react, you end up getting stuck in echo chambers. You double down on your beliefs. You surround yourself only with people who agree with you. You attack anyone who thinks differently. Because at an unconscious level, disagreement feels like a threat to your survival. The same thing happens with religion. If you were raised in a religious household and never questioned those beliefs, never thought for yourself about what you actually believe versus what you were told to believe, then you'll fight and attack others who threaten your psychological safety within that bubble. And this pattern shows up everywhere. If you unconsciously identify as a lawyer, as a gamer, as an introvert, as someone who's bad with money, as someone who's not creative, these identities will prevent you from taking the actions necessary to achieve a better life, because taking those actions would threaten who you think you are, and your mind will do everything in its power to maintain psychological consistency, even if that consistency is keeping you miserable. This is why change is so hard. It's not really about discipline or motivation or willpower. It's about being willing to let an old version of yourself die so a new version can emerge. And that process, it's terrifying for most people, but it's also the only way forward.
The life you want exists at a specific level of mind. Now that you understand how identity forms and why it's so resistant to change, I want to introduce you to something fascinating. The mind evolves through predictable stages over time. This isn't New Age nonsense. This has been documented extensively in psychology through models like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Lowenger's stages of ego development, spiral dynamics, and integral theory. Each of these builds on the previous ones. When you're born, you're essentially a survival sponge. You absorb whatever beliefs and behaviors help you feel safe and secure in your environment, which are heavily dictated by your culture and family.
And if you're not careful, if you don't consciously work on your development, your mind can crystallize at an early stage, and that makes it incredibly difficult to live a meaningful, fulfilling life. I've synthesized these various models into what I call the 9 stages of consciousness, and I want to walk you through each one, because understanding where you are and where you need to go is crucial for actual transformation. Stage 1 is impulsive. This is where we all start. There's no separation between impulse and action. Everything is black and white. A toddler hits when angry because the feeling and the behavior are the same thing. There's no filter, no reflection, no consideration of consequences. Stage 2 is self-protective. This is when you realize the world can be dangerous and you need to look out for yourself. A kid learns to hide report cards, lie about chores, figure out what adults want to hear so they can avoid punishment and get rewards. This is basic strategic thinking emerging. Stage 3 is conformist. This is where most society operates. At this stage, you are your group, and its rules feel like objective reality itself. You genuinely cannot fathom why anyone would vote differently than your family. The idea of questioning your religious upbringing feels wrong or even evil.
Intelligence is the ability to get what you want out of life. Naval Ravikant has a definition of intelligence that I love. He says the only real test of intelligence is if you get what you want out of life. Not your IQ score, not how many books you've read, not how many degrees you have, but whether you actually achieve the life you truly want. And there's a formula for this kind of success. It has 3 key ingredients. 1, agency, your belief that you can actually affect change in your life. 2, opportunity, the actual options and resources available to you. 3, intelligence, your ability to effectively pursue your goals. If you have high agency but low opportunity, it doesn't matter how likely you are to act toward a goal because that goal won't bear much fruit. You're trying to grow crops in a desert. If you have opportunity and agency but low intelligence, using the definition we're about to explore, then you'll never fully benefit from that opportunity. You'll squander it. Now, I've talked about agency extensively in other content. And in terms of opportunity, I can't tell you to physically relocate your life, but if you don't see the absolutely massive abundance of digital opportunity right in front of you in 2026, I honestly don't know what to tell you. The barriers to starting an online business, building an audience, learning valuable skills, and creating income have never been lower in human history. So let's focus on intelligence, because this is where most people get stuck. To understand intelligence in this context, we need to look at cybernetics. This word comes from the Greek kyberneticus, which means to steer or good at steering. It's also known as the art of getting what you want. So, if intelligence is about getting what you want out of life, understanding cybernetics helps you do that much faster and more effectively. Cybernetics illustrates the properties of intelligent systems. Here's how they work. 1. Have a clear goal. 2. Act toward that goal. 3. Sense where you currently are. 4. Compare your current position to your goal. 5. Adjust your actions based on that feedback and act again. You can judge intelligence based on the system's ability to iterate and persist through trial and error without giving up. Think about a ship that gets blown off course. An intelligent navigation system senses the deviation and corrects back toward the destination.
That's when breakthrough happens. So let me ask you some questions. How do you dig into your own mind? How do you become aware of your conditioning? How do you reach those profound insights and truths that actually change the trajectory of your entire life? through one simple but often painful act: questioning. Real, deep, uncomfortable questioning. Something that so few people actually do. And you can tell who does it and who doesn't by how they speak, how they think, how they justify their lives. Questioning is thinking, and very few people actually think. They just repeat, they react, they operate on autopilot. So I want to give you a comprehensive protocol right now that you can use not just this year, but every year for the rest of your life. This protocol will help you reset your entire existence and launch into a season of intense, focused progress. Now, I need you to understand, this will require 1 full day to complete properly, not 1 hour, not while you're doing other things. 1 dedicated day where you're completely focused on this process. Here's what you'll need: a pen or... Okay, tomorrow morning, or whatever morning you've scheduled for this protocol, I want you to wake up without immediately grabbing your phone. No social media, no email, no news. Just you and your thoughts. Make some coffee or tea, sit down with your notebook, and set aside 15 to 30 minutes. That's the length of 1 YouTube video. You can absolutely do this. I'm about to give you a series of questions. Do not rush through these. Do not attempt to outsource this contemplation to ChatGPT or Claude or any AI. This has to come from you. I want you to break past the limiter that's been placed on your mind. If you can't answer these immediately, that's okay. Come back to them later in the morning, but answer them honestly. No one else will read this unless you show them. Question 1. What is the dull and persistent dissatisfaction you've learned to live with? I'm not asking about deep suffering or trauma. I'm asking about what you've learned to tolerate. What low-grade misery has become your normal? Write it down. Question 2. What do you complain about repeatedly but never actually change? Think about the past year. Write down the 3 complaints you've voiced most often, to friends, to family, even just in your own head. Question 3. For each of those complaints, and this is crucial, what would someone who watched your actual behavior, not your words, conclude that you actually want? For example, if you complain about being broke, but you also spend money impulsively and never track your expenses, what does your behavior say you actually want? Maybe you want to avoid the responsibility that comes with having money. Maybe you want to maintain a victim identity. Maybe you want an excuse for why you haven't pursued your dreams yet. Be brutally honest here. Question 4. What truth about your current life would be unbearable to admit to someone you deeply respect? Maybe a mentor, maybe a parent, maybe someone you look up to. What would make you feel ashamed if they knew? Now pause and take a breath. If you answered those truthfully, you should be feeling some discomfort right now. That's good. That's the dissonance we need. Now we're going to turn this into what I call an anti-vision. This is a brutal awareness of the life you absolutely do not want to live. We need to harness that negative energy and use it to propel you towards something better. Question 5. If absolutely nothing changes in your life for the next 5 years, describe an average Tuesday 5 years from now in vivid detail. Where do you wake up? What room? What does your body feel like when you first open your eyes? What's the very first thought that enters your mind? Who's around you or who's not around you? What do you do between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m.? How do you feel at 10 p.m. when you're lying in bed? Write this out in detail. Make it visceral. Question 6. Now do the same thing but for 10 years from now. If nothing changes, what have you missed out on? What opportunities closed? What relationships deteriorated? Who gave up on you? What do people say about you when you're not in the room? What do you see when you look in the mirror? Now, imagine you're at the end of your life. You lived the safe version. You never broke the pattern. You never...
Okay, tomorrow morning, or whatever morning you've scheduled for this protocol, I want you to wake up without immediately grabbing your phone. No social media, no email, no news, just you and your thoughts. Make some coffee or tea, sit down with your notebook, and set aside 15 to 30 minutes. That's the length of one YouTube video. You can absolutely do this. I'm about to give you a series of questions. Do not rush through these. Do not attempt to outsource this contemplation to ChatGPT or Claude or any AI. This has to come from you. I want you to break past the limiter that's been placed on your mind. If you can't answer these immediately, that's okay. Come back to them later in the morning. But answer them honestly. No one else will read this unless you show them. Question 1. What is the dull and persistent dissatisfaction you've learned to live with? I'm not asking about deep suffering or trauma. I'm asking about what you've learned to tolerate. What low-grade misery has become your normal? Write it down. Question 2. What do you complain about repeatedly but never actually change? Think about the past year. Write down the 3 complaints you've voiced most often. To friends, to family, even just in your own head. Question 3. For each of those complaints, and this is crucial, what would someone who watched your actual behavior, not your words, conclude that you actually want? For example, if you complain about being broke, but you also spend money impulsively and never track your expenses, what does your behavior say you actually want? Maybe you want to avoid the responsibility that comes with having money. Maybe you want to maintain a victim identity. Maybe you want an excuse for why you haven't pursued your dreams yet. Be brutally honest here. Question 4. What truth about your current life would be unbearable to admit to someone you deeply respect? Maybe a mentor, maybe a parent, maybe someone you look up to. What would make you feel ashamed if they knew? Now pause and take a breath. If you answered those truthfully, you should be feeling something intense right now. That's good. That's the dissonance we need. Now we're going to turn this into what I call an anti-vision. This is a brutal awareness of the life you absolutely do not want to live. We need to harness that negative.
Part 2. Throughout the day, pattern interrupts. This next part is absolutely crucial, and most people skip it because it seems weird or inconvenient. Don't skip it. Throughout the day, you need to break your unconscious patterns. You need to interrupt the autopilot that runs your life. I want you to take out your phone right now. Yes, right now as you're watching this, and create random reminders or calendar alerts with specific questions embedded in them. The more random and unexpected these are, the better. Don't schedule them during times when you'll be in important meetings, but do schedule them during your normal routine. Here are the questions and suggested times. 11 a.m. What am I avoiding right now by doing what I'm doing? 1:30 p.m. If someone filmed the last 2 hours of my life, what would they conclude I want from my life? 3:15 p.m. Am I moving toward the life I hate or the life I want? 5 p.m. What's the most important thing I'm pretending isn't important right now? 7:30 p.m. What did I do today out of identity protection rather than genuine desire? 9 p.m. When did I feel most alive today? When did I feel most dead? Set those reminders right now. Seriously,
pause this video and actually do it. Additionally, during any time you're commuting, walking, or just lying around, contemplate these questions. What would change if I stopped needing people to see me as the identity from question 10? Where in my life am I trading aliveness for safety? What's the smallest version of the person I want to become that I could be tomorrow? Don't journal these necessarily, just think deeply about them. Let them marinate in your consciousness. Part 3. Evening. Synthesis and direction. All right, it's evening now on your protocol day. You've done the morning excavation. You've been interrupted throughout the day with questions that kept you conscious and aware. Now we need to synthesize everything into a clear direction forward. Pull out your notebook again. Review everything you wrote this morning. Read it through slowly. Let it sink in. Then answer these final questions. Question 15. After going through this entire day, what feels most true about why you've been stuck? What's the real reason beneath all the stories and excuses? Question 16. What is the actual enemy? Name it clearly and specifically. Not circumstances, not other people, not bad luck. The internal pattern or belief that has been running the show and keeping you trapped. Question 17. Write a single sentence that captures what you refuse to let your life become. This is your anti-vision compressed into one powerful statement. It should make you feel something visceral when you read it. For example, I refuse to reach 40 and realize I wasted my prime years in a cubicle because I was too afraid to bet on myself. Question 18. Write a single sentence that captures what you're building toward. This is your vision MVP. It will evolve, and that's okay. But what's your current best understanding of where you're headed? For example, I'm building a life where I wake up excited, work on projects I care about, and have the freedom to spend my time how I choose. Now, the final piece. We need to create goals. But remember, these aren't goals in the traditional sense where you're trying to hit some arbitrary target. These are lenses, points of view, frames through which you'll perceive reality and make decisions. Think of them as different zoom levels on a camera. You need the wide shot and the close-up. Question 19. 1 year lens. What would have to be true 1 year from now for you to know you've completely broken the old pattern? Name one concrete, observable thing. Question 20. 1 month lens. What would have to be true 1 month from now for that 1 year goal to remain possible? What's the next milestone? Question 21. Daily lens. What are 2 to 3 specific actions you can time block tomorrow that the person you're becoming would simply do naturally? Write all of that down. Now take a completely fresh page and create what I call your life operating system. Write these 6 components. 1. Anti-vision. What is the life I absolutely refuse to live? 2. Vision. What is the life I'm building toward? 3. 1 year goal. What does success look like 12 months from now? 4. 1 month project. What am I building, learning, or creating this month? 5. Daily levers. What are my 2 to 3 non-negotiables that move the needle? 6. Constraints. What am I not willing to sacrifice? What are my boundaries? This single page becomes your operating system, your constitution, the lens through which you make every decision. Which brings us to practicality. You should turn your life into a video game. Now let me show you why this framework is so powerful by connecting it to something you already understand: video games. There's a quote from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the researcher who discovered flow states, that perfectly captures this. He said, "The optimal state of inner experience is one in which there is order in consciousness. This happens when psychic energy or attention is invested in realistic goals and when skills match the opportunities for action. The pursuit of a goal brings order in awareness because a person must concentrate attention on the task at hand and momentarily forget everything else." Video games are literally the poster child for obsession, engagement, and flow states. People play them for hours without getting bored. They persist through difficult challenges. They experience genuine joy and satisfaction from making progress. Why? Because games have all the psychological components that create focus, clarity, and intrinsic motivation. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to reverse engineer those components and apply them to your actual life. When you structure your life using the 6 components I just gave you, you're essentially creating your own personal video game. Here's how it maps. Your vision is how you win the game. It's the ultimate objective, at least until the game evolves and expands. Your anti-vision is what's at stake. It's what happens if you lose or give up. Every great game needs stakes. Without stakes, who cares? Your 1-year goal is the main quest, the primary priority in this chapter of your life. Your 1-month project is the boss fight. It's how you gain experience points and acquire new abilities and resources. Each project you complete levels you up. Your daily levers are the side quests and daily challenges, the repeatable actions that unlock new opportunities and compound over time. Your constraints are the rules of the game. Every game has rules, and those limitations actually encourage creativity rather than restrict it. All of these components work together like concentric circles, like force fields protecting your mind from distractions, shiny objects, and other people's agendas. The more you play the game, the more you take action aligned with these components, the stronger this force becomes. And eventually, it becomes who you are. It integrates into your identity. And at that point, you wouldn't have it any other way. Living aligned with your vision feels natural. Acting on your daily levers feels effortless. You're not grinding, you're playing. You're not forcing, you're flowing. And that's when you know you've truly transformed.
So let me recap everything we've covered. First, we talked about why traditional New Year's resolutions fail. Because people focus on changing their actions rather than changing their identity. You aren't where you want to be because you aren't the person who would be there. Second, we explored how all behavior is goal-oriented, even when those goals are unconscious. You aren't where you want to be because at an unconscious level, you don't actually want to be there. Your current behavior is achieving hidden goals. Third, we examined how your identity was formed through conditioning and why it resists change. You aren't where you want to be because you're afraid to be there, because being there would require letting go of who you think you are. Fourth, we looked at the stages of consciousness and how your mind evolves through predictable levels. The life you want exists at a specific level of mind, and you need to develop to reach it. Fifth, we redefined intelligence as the ability to get what you want out of life by understanding feedback loops and persisting through iteration. Sixth, and most importantly, I gave you a complete 1-day protocol
to excavate your psyche, break unconscious patterns, and discover what you truly want. This is the practical application of everything we discussed. And finally, we turned your life into a game with clear rules, missions, quests, and stakes, so that you can experience the same level of engagement in your real life that you feel playing your favorite games. Now here's what I need you to understand. Information without application is just entertainment. You can watch this entire video, think, wow, that was interesting, and then go right back to your old life. Or you can actually do the work. You can schedule that full day for the protocol. You can answer those questions honestly. You can set up those pattern interrupts. You can create your life operating system. You can actually change. The choice, as always, is yours. But if you've made it this far in this video, 90 minutes of dense content, there's something in you that wants more, that knows you're capable of more, that refuses to settle for the default path. Listen to that voice. Before you go, I want to give you one final thought. You don't need to figure out the entire journey right now. You don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take the first step. And the first step is committing to that one-day protocol within the next 7 days. So pull out your calendar right now. Pick a day, block it off, title it Life Reset Protocol, or whatever resonates with you. And then show up for yourself. Because nobody else is going to do this for you. Your transformation is your responsibility. Your life is your responsibility. Your future is being created by the choices you make today. Make it count. If you found this valuable, please like this video so more people can find it. Subscribe if you want more content like this that actually goes deep instead of just scratching the surface. And drop a comment below telling me what your biggest insight was from this video. What clicked for you? What are you going to implement? I read every comment and I love seeing people's breakthroughs. Alright, that's it. That's everything I've got for you today. Now go do the work. I'll see you in the next one.